The tempo of the response should have been increased. Too little, too late.
We have shit for poor people. Who buys our shit?
As corporations push fake food on their customers and COVID inquiries deliver predictable reports while telling the public that ever-tighter controls, drills and behavioural conditioning are for our own good, how much of this is really preparation for safety and how much of it is preparation for something far darker? Did you ever go visit that dumb wall opposite the Houses of Parliament where hearts were put up to commemorate dead relatives? Didn't you see already that that was an attempt at creating a kind of apparently organic piece of folk culture? What absolute bullshit we've been subject to throughout this pandemic period. There is nothing they will not do to control you. Think of the funerals you missed. Think of the births that you missed. Think of the church services you missed, the parties that you missed. It was all a complete sham.
Politicians and administrators in the UK government and the devolved administrations were presented with unenviable choices. Whatever decision they took, there was often no right answer or good outcome. They also had to make decisions in conditions of extreme pressure and initially without access to data or a full understanding of the epidemiological position.
Well, if you are unable to do your job of protecting the public and managing crisis, how about you stop playing that role, decentralize power absolutely, incorporate direct democracy and respect the individual sovereignty of all of us. Allow us to be who we are. Allow us to control our own communities, our own community budgets, and make decisions like, hey, this is the information. We're probably going to stay indoors. You guys can stay indoors if you want. That's our recommendation. But we'll understand if you want to go a different route. Particularly if you remember, like I do, that they were having parties the whole way through it. Now, not only is that kind of galling in a sort of visceral way, I suppose, it's also an indication that they themselves weren't scared. Why's that? They knew. They knew that it weren't that bad for you. It's only really dangerous if you have a bunch of comorbidities and you're not very well. What they should have been telling you is if you're healthy and young, crack on. This vaccine, it doesn't even stop transmission. If you are an old, vulnerable person, my God, maybe try this vaccine. But I gotta tell you, every time I hear about a heart attack or a stroke, my first question is, I sometimes don't even ask it because I know the answer. Did you take it? How many did you take?
To assess what was reasonable, one must therefore put the decisions into proper context. Nonetheless, I can summarise my findings of the response as too little, too late.
Isn't that amazing that the conclusion that's being drawn is we need to be more authoritative and we need more control? We should have locked down earlier and locked down more aggressively. No.
All four governments failed to appreciate the scale of the threat or the urgency of response it demanded in the early part of 2020, relying in part on misleading assurances that the UK was properly prepared for a pandemic.
In the UK, they're looking to get rid of trial by jury, except for the most serious crimes. I'm on trial for an extremely serious crime, and hopefully justice will be served because I've got nothing to fear from justice. Imagine for a moment that I was the person that was conducting the inquiry, saying, well, I slept around a lot, so I've been in a bunch of bathrooms with a bunch of strangers, and yeah, promiscuity does generate some suffering and some grievance, clearly. However, that is not akin to bypassing consent. And I've conducted my inquiry now, and it turns out, I shouldn't have been sleeping around so much, but actually I've done nothing wrong. Maybe that inquiry would be rejected. There should be a trial. There should be a jury. All of the evidence should be scrutinised and analysed. And it should be impartially undertaken. This is an inquiry undertaken by people that are hiding the truth. And curiously enough, they are participants in the conditions that generate the trial that I'm referring to. What a crazy coincidence.
Once the scientific community and the scientific advisors for each nation had become aware that the virus was causing substantially more cases of moderate or severe respiratory illness in China than was being officially reported, and that it had spread from China,
Are they not aware of the world they're living in? Are they not aware that most of us know now that gain-of-function research means that these scientists, upon whose opinions they want us to rely, are the very people that are responsible for taking back coronaviruses, making them more effective and infectious? It was their ineptitude that meant that it came out of that lab, at best. I mean, some people's theories go even further than that, of course, and that they actually only migrated to Wuhan when their anthrax experiments under Fauci were no longer permitted on homeland soil here in America. Are they aware of that? Does she know that most of us are aware that Pfizer have denied access to the files of their clinical trials for 75 years? Is she aware that most of us know now that the reason people say that there's no link between autism and vaccines is because they've deliberately never conducted any trials? Because if they did conduct trials, guess what they would discover? They can no longer rely on an orthodoxy of scientism because people no longer trust that. They recognize that the word science is the pinnacle of reason, and that reason, if separated from divine principle, becomes the reason of the most powerful. I.e., Campbell's Soup have reasoned that the most effective way to maximize profit is to put potentially toxic, certainly not nutritious, substances in their food.
The center of a lawsuit claiming the company's vice president went on an hour-long tirade attacking the company's products and employees before taking aim at its customers.
And the former employee recorded it all.
We have shit for poor people. Who buys our shit?
And that's just part of an over an hour-long rant, says former security analyst for Campbell's.
Can you imagine, like, at some point there was a person called Campbell, right? I'm guessing, like, who started a food company, who had some ideals. I'm guessing, am I romantic? Am I nostalgic? Am I a fool? That really had values that they believed in. I mean, I see that logo and I think even of, you know, sort of quite post-modern takes on it, like Warhol's famous Campbell Soup imagery. But I also recognize that the reason Warhol, genius that he was, did that was because there was some inherent beauty in their design. The logo's good, the font's good, and I bet there was a time where the product was to some degree good. How did we get here, man? What is this deterioration? What is this destruction? And how do we stop it?
I don't buy Campbell's products barely anymore. It's so healthy. Now that I know what the in it.
They're cursing a lot in their meetings at Campbell's. I think it was like a folksy homie. Well, now, here at Campbell's, we're just trying to create fine soups for good, honest people. This shit, this milk, I'm gonna drink this ass shit, whole pig N-word, whole shit. Well, now, hang on a minute. That's actually one of our finest soups.
Even in a can of soup, I look at it, look at me, bioengineered meat. I don't want to eat a
Campbell's Soup have reasoned that the most effective way to maximize profit is to put potentially toxic, certainly not nutritious, substances in their food. People have reasoned that the best way for the vaccine industry to flourish is by granting them indemnity in the event of vaccine injury. That's where reason takes you. The problem is now we have transparency, whether they like it or not, because here is that transparency. Here is someone with very little to lose now, willing to tell the truth. I've got a lot to lose, actually. I really love my kids and I love my wife and I sort of love being alive. But I recognize that it's not mine and it's going anyway. So here we go.
The warning signs were there. The tempo of the response should have been increased. It was not.
That's actually made things worse. We know less now after the inquiry. That's amazing. That can't be easy to do in a way. I respect her for that. The UK COVID inquiry's recent findings, delivered with an air of finality, insist that Britain acted too slowly in early 2020 and should have imposed lockdowns a full week earlier. That judgment lands strangely when set against the conspicuous absence of serious engagement with Sweden's contrasting approach, a model built on voluntary measures, open schools, minimal restrictions, and outcomes that now look far less devastating than Britain's. Fact check, not locking down at all like Sweden would have saved lives. Okay, so there you go. A whole thing, complete bollocks. That's fact. That's science from a scientist with integrity. Because when I say things like, you know, not trusting the scientific orthodoxy, I mean the aspects of it that are promoted in order to ensure that the agenda of the powerful can be pursued. Jay Bhattacharya, of one of the miracles of the Trump administration, is now the head of the NIH. And If these good men were allowed to flourish and pursue their own agenda, then, these kind of facts would become more commonly understood and certainly more commonly available. By quietly sidelining a real-world counterexample that challenges the inevitability of lockdowns, the inquiry has done more than rewrite the past. It has sketched the contours of the future, a future in which emergency powers become default tools and dissenting data is treated as noise. This sense of a predetermined narrative forms the backdrop against which the next revelation emerges, making it feel less like a bureaucratic tidiness and more like ideological preparation, or pre-bunking, as Michael Schellenberger told me once it was called. Into this landscape drops news of Exercise Pegasus, the largest pandemic drill in UK history, carried out this autumn in near secrecy. It simulated the arrival of a lethal enterovirus targeting children, travel bans, shuttered schools, collapsing hospitals, business closures, and fictional protests swept across the country in the scenario. What makes Pegasus so unsettling is not merely its scale, but its timing. It follows an inquiry that all but canonized lockdown logic, enshrining the idea that rapid sweeping restrictions were not only justified, but insufficiently aggressive. Against that backdrop, Pegasus looks less like a neutral stress test and more like a rehearsal for the automatic suspension of ordinary life, a silent normalization of instant crisis government. Our society is being told that it must accept lockdowns as both necessary and belated is now being rehearsed through simulations designed to make the extraordinary feel routine. This while many of us still recall that Event 201 played out a couple of years before what many people still regard as the pandemic. This quiet conditioning becomes more disturbing when viewed alongside the leaked tape from a Campbell's Soup executive who mocked poor people for eating the company's products, described them as shit, and boasted about the use of bioengineered meat and even 3D printed chicken. Is that a real sentence? This is not a man embarrassed by what his company sells, it's a man confident that the people consuming it are powerless to demand anything better. The contempt displayed in his words reveals an attitude that increasingly defines this relationship between elites and the public. One class engineers systems from food to health policy, and the other has little choice but to comply. If pandemic management is the realm where elites dictate how people may move, work, gather, or even breathe, the food system is where they dictate what people ingest. In both spheres, the pattern is the same. The powerful design the world, and everyone else lives inside it.
Welcome to the Schwab Academy.
You're all right, mate. I'll stay out here.
The mission of the Schwab Academy is to prepare people for the tremendous changes which will be caused by the transformation from the industrial to the intelligent age.
That is not the mission of the Schwab Academy. We're here to help you, and one of the ways we're going to help you is you're not going to have any money, and you'll only be able to live on Campbell's Soup and things that I'm continually gurgling up out of my larynx, which actually I usually send over to Campbell's Soup. Oh, there it is. I just let it drool out. Look at that milk. Who's drinking this shit? The announcement of the Schwab Academy intensifies this picture. Former WEF chairman Klaus Schwab, already famous for predicting a world where individuals own nothing and are happy, has launched a new institution to prepare society for the so-called intelligence age. The WEF has long been candid about its ambition. Schwab openly boasted of influencing leaders like Justin Trudeau and Emmanuel Macron through his Young Global Leaders program, bragging that his network had managed to penetrate the cabinets of governments across the world. When the architect of such a project unveils an academy for shaping the next era of elites, it signals more than training, it signals centralization. The cultivation of a worldview that will be carried into policy across continents without meaningful democratic accountability. It is the managerial future made formal. Aldous Huxley warned that the ultimate revolution would not rely on terror or tanks, but on conditioning people to accept the limits placed upon us, shaping our desires and expectations till we no longer recognize the boundaries as boundaries at all. That warning now echoes uncomfortably through the confluence of the COVID inquiry selective memory, the sprawling drill machinery of Exercise Pegasus, and the corporate sneer hidden inside that dreadful Campbell's recording. Each piece alone might be explained away. Together they form a dreadful structure that we, and only we, can annihilate and destroy. History helps us to see the pattern. Of course, the 1994 Senate hearings where tobacco executives swore nicotine was not addictive exposed the quiet arrogance of the institutions willing to deceive the public while regulators slept.
Yes or no? Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe nicotine is not addictive, yes.
Ronald Reagan's 1964, A Time for Choosing, cautioned that a self-appointed class of experts would use crisis, real or manufactured, to justify the steady constriction of individual liberty.
Whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
These moments, though, were not anomalies. They were early signals of a system that treats transparency as optional and us, the public, as manageable. Today, that system's matured. Secret school lockdown drills simulate nationwide shutdowns. Global institutions construct academies to mould future leaders. Food companies experiment on the public while mocking us behind closed doors. And official inquiries are raising convenient data to preserve comfort in narratives. The message is increasingly clear. Crisis will define the future. The elites will define the crisis. The question is no longer whether society is being prepared, it's whether the preparation itself is the mechanism of control, and whether the line between safeguarding the public and managing the public has already been silently crossed. We're living in a managed reality. The only way to escape the managed reality is to find within yourself an access point to sublime and divine power. If your power is all external, if you believe that the only things that are real are things that can be measured and held and reasoned, then you are already in a cube of their dark power. The only way out is not via a delicious cup of Campbell's soup or a delicious mouthful of Klaus Schwab's saliva or a delicious earful of that Baroness's interpretation of the managed and limited data that they're happy to give you and tell you that it's an inquiry. The only way out is in, and you must move within. I would say with some urgency. And when I say with some urgency, I mean now, in the now, presently and immediately. There is an opportunity for you to get out of this. There's an opportunity for all of us to get out of it, and we have to take it now. Well, that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and chat. Remember, you can win this crazy Jeep of mine by acquiring some of our beautiful Reborn products. They're products that I take, that I use, that keep me healthy and well. And you'll be supporting me as I attempt to participate in projects that might hopefully change all of our lives for the better. But more important than any of that, if you can, please stay free. Thanks for watching the video. Have a look at this one over here, or join us Monday, Wednesday and Friday on Rumble.